Today, we're diving into what our source calls a political hit job, one that apparently blew up on the launch pad. You know that little checkbox you have to click online, the one to prove you're not a robot? It's pretty straightforward, but what happens when that same question gets asked in the real world, where the stakes are way, way higher? And that's really the question at the heart of this whole thing. Today, we're unpacking a wild story filled with some really sensational claims, allegedly forged documents, and a political playbook that, our source says, has been collecting dust for over 20 years. So first things first, we've got to figure out if we're dealing with someone genuine or, a bot, which takes us right to the core of the drama. The suitcase scandal. I mean, it sounds like a movie title, right? And it's got all the ingredients. Suitcases supposedly stuffed with cash, some of the biggest names in politics, and it all kicks off with one star witness. So meet the man at the center of this storm, Orly Gudeza. He's an ex-Marine, and he walked into the Senate claiming to be a former bodyguard and a trusted insider for Congressman Zaldi. And the story he told was a blockbuster. He claimed he was a key player in this huge operation to deliver what he called basura, or trash, which was code for massive amounts of cash to one of the most powerful people in the entire country. Okay, so let's break down the numbers he threw out there because they were super specific. First, he claimed there were a whopping 46 suitcases in total, all supposedly filled to the brim with cash. Now, out of those 46, he testified that 35 of them were carted off and delivered straight to the home of House Speaker Martin Romualdez in Taguig. And the last 11 suitcases, well, those were supposedly left with the man he claimed was his boss, Zaldi. I mean, these are incredibly detailed, heavy-hitting accusations. But here's where everything takes a huge left turn. According to our source material, these explosive claims started to completely fall apart, like almost immediately. First up, his credentials. That whole "I was Zaldi's bodyguard" thing, our source says, nope, never happened. They paint him more as a political drifter. He'd been around government, yeah, with the OVP's security group and had ties to the PCOO. But the crucial point is, he wasn't the close insider he made himself out to be. Then you've got a problem with, basic logistics. Guteza claims this delivery went down at Romualdez's house in McKinley. But according to our source, that house has been a full-blown construction site since January 2024. I mean, can you imagine trying to sneak 35 suitcases past a bunch of construction workers? It just doesn't add up. But honestly, the real knockout blow to his testimony? It came from the legal paperwork itself, the sworn affidavit that was supposed to back up his entire story. The lawyer whose name was all over that document, Addie Petchy Rose Aspera, came forward and just torched the whole thing. She said her signature was forged, her official seal was faked, and she called the entire document, and this is a direct quote, spurious, fraudulent, and injurious. Wow. That's not just a crack in the story, that's a crater. So you've got to be asking yourself, right? If the story is this flimsy, why even tell it? What was the point? Well, according to our source, this isn't a new movie. It's a rerun. Our source connects the dots all the way back to a huge scandal from 2001 that involved a witness who went by the name Adore Mawanay. And see that name that pops up in both incidents? Mike Defensor. That's a key detail, apparently. And this is where our source gives this alleged tactic a name, the Mawanay playbook. So what is it? It's basically a strategy where you find a witness with a really juicy story, you push them into the spotlight to create as much media chaos as possible, and you fully expect the story to fall apart later. And this playbook, allegedly, has 4 simple steps. 1, you produce a witness. 2, you amplify their story on the biggest stage you can find, like a Senate hearing. 3, you just watch as the whole thing collapses. And 4, you abandon it. The handlers just shrug and move on because the goal was never to get a conviction. It was just to make a mess and sling some political mud. So this all leads to the million-dollar question. If this was a political demolition job, who was the target and who was pulling the strings? According to our source, here's how the alleged cast of characters breaks down. You've got the on-the-ground handlers, supposedly Redante Marcoleta and Mike Defensor. The clear targets were President Marcos's key people in the House, Romualdez, Coe, and Eric Yap. And the alleged masterminds behind it all, the so-called Duterte bloc. So why go through all this trouble? The alleged game plan was pretty straightforward. Damage President Marcos's closest allies in Congress, stir up some trouble and division, and weaken his entire political base long before the 2028 elections even get here. It's an old tactic, divide and conquer, just dressed up as a corruption expose.
So did it work? Was this the devastating political bombshell they were hoping for?
Well, not exactly. In fact, our source describes it as a total backfire. What was supposed to be a bombshell turned into a boomerang that came whipping right back and smacked the people who threw it. And that's really what this all boils down to, isn't it? We've just walked through what our source is calling a recycled political trick. But it leaves you with a much bigger question to chew on. When these kinds of tactics get used again and again over the years, who's the one that really ends up paying the price for all that political noise and confusion? That's definitely something to think about.